my great privilege to be the first person that's done a project like this with young women, and it's also my great privilege to work with all of the people in our community who are supporting us.
Are there any others like this in Australia, or is this the only one?
This is the only one I know of in the world.
That's Graeme Wiggins, the director of the Bendigo Tech School, who's working with about 25 girls, or young girls, who are involved in a project to convert an old Range Rover into an all-electric car.
And that was Robert McLean, host of Climate Conversations, one of the many great shows on the Climactic Collective, the podcast network by and for Australia's climate community. And New Zealand's. I always forget to say Australia and New Zealand's climate community.
There are dire warnings that New South Wales will be hit by increasingly extreme weather.
2015 was the hottest year since climate records began. Figures show this July was the single hottest month in recorded history.
Australia sweltered through its hottest spring on record.
Climate change is now affecting every country on every continent.
It's the rate that's of great concern.
And what do you put that rate down to?
Oh, it's human activity.
We have everything we need. Some still doubt that we have the will to act, but I say the will to act is itself a renewable resource.
Yes, you are listening to Climactic, the flagship podcast of the Climactic Collective. I'm your host and publisher of the Climactic Collective, Mark Spencer, and we are bringing you, in the month of July, a special topical selection of Climactic episodes, highlighting the best from across the Climactic Collective of episodes focused on climate solutions. Now, of course, on the Climactic Collective, we have shows from a wide variety of perspectives and intersections with climate. We talk about climate grief, climate awareness, how to talk about the climate crisis, but maybe climate solutions and how we're actually going to improve or get towards a way out of this situation is something we can definitely talk a lot more about. So what I've got for you here today is an episode of Climate Conversations, the wonderful program from Shepparton by Robert McLean. And this episode in particular is a look at a wonderful project from Bendigo, where a group of students, all girls, is being given the opportunity to get some hands-on skills with electric vehicle retrofitting. Now, of course, we all know that in the future, in the very near future, we're going to need to see a lot more not petrol vehicles on the roads. Electric vehicles are going to play a huge role in that. Getting more of us into EVs is going to be an important solution to reducing emissions down to zero and reaching net zero, ideally by 2030. So students with an aptitude for science, technology, engineering, math, getting them exposed to electric vehicles as early as possible and hands-on time is extremely important. There is a short interview with one of the students themselves at the end that will seriously lift your spirits and put a smile on your face for the rest of the day, so make sure to hang around for that. And thank you very much to Robert McLean for sharing this episode of Climate Conversations with you through the Climactic feed. Please make sure to get over to climactic.fm to subscribe to his fantastic show, Climate Conversations. I now have the stats. I know that there's only a few of you, literally a handful, under 10, who subscribe to Climactic and who subscribe to Climate Conversations. So that means there is a few hundred of you who can go over and check out Robert's amazing work on Climate Conversations. So get to it. And if you've got a suggestion for another great climate solutions-focused episode that you've heard from beyond the Climactic Collective or from one of the shows on the network, please just let me know, and I'd love to feature it this month during our July focus on climate solutions. All right, enjoy this episode. Intro music was In Paler Skies by Blue Dot Sessions.
Importantly, I should mention that I caught up with one of the pupils involved with the project, and so make sure you listen right to the end to hear what she has to say. Welcome to this latest episode of Climate Conversations. I'm your host, Robert McLean, and I'm coming to you from Shepparton in Australia's northern Victoria, from the unceded lands of the Yorta Yorta people. This podcast, I hope, will allow you to better understand the implications and complications of the climate crisis. First, we heard from a didgeridoo player. then an instrumental from Music for a Warming World, and you'll find a link to that Melbourne-based group in an episode note. Join me as we explore another of the many stories to be found in the vast array of climate conversation. And please, if you enjoy this episode, feel free to share it with your friends. My first question to Graeme was about the name of the program running at the Bendigo Tech School.
Well, it probably needs a better name, but at the moment we call it the Girls in STEAM, so the full acronym, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, Mathematics, Electric Car Project. We sometimes refer to it informally as the Jaunt Project because they're our major partner, although we don't use that name formally because it excludes our other industry partners.
So is Jaunt a local car company or something?
Jaunt are a local electric conversion company that has been set up specifically to convert four-wheel drives into vehicles for adventure on a community partnership model. They've been going for about 3 and a bit years now. And so in terms of this project, they're the major partner that we work with in terms of getting the vehicle electrified.
So what initiated this program, Graeme?
Well, I guess just interest and passion for technology. The seed for this was probably when I went to a conference and a Sydney school was talking about a project they did with girls that where they took a paddock wreck every year and they fully restored it and then sold it for charity, auctioned it for charity every year. And the teacher who presented that, I think it was actually Winona College in Sydney, was talking about attitudes in the community towards women in STEM careers, and they'd always say, who did the work on this car? And there's probably a few stories I could tell you with this bunch of girls and attitudes from their families about their involvement. But anyway, look, there was that and that notion of using a very motivated, very engaged, organised group of young people to help do what essentially is, if you're doing it by yourself, a lot of work, and also just a passion for what 10 years ago, when the thought bubble for this started, was the, and this, what you've got to remember is when I first had the idea to do this, Tesla hadn't produced a single Model S at that stage, and there were very few electric cars that you could buy, and it was probably really off the back of the story of the movie Who Killed the Electric Car that I think my interest in this space generated. I actually started at the school I worked in at that time, but I left before I could really get stuck into it. But we'd actually bought a car, and we'd also connected with Ceres, who were in Brunswick. They were doing some early pioneering work on electric cars in Australia at that point in time. But mostly it's about the future of energy and transport and having a dialogue with our community about the fact that it's achievable. And so part of this project and also the vision of Jaunt was to make sure that there was community access through a community rental, community enterprise program, which is what we've set up.
I was going to ask, is this program driven at all by the climate crisis?
Well, look, I think we have to have the climate crisis in the front of our mind whenever we're talking about any design or manufacturing, because every manufactured good has an impact on the environment. And I think, front of mind with this particular project is because we are upcycling effectively wrecked or cars that had reached the end of their effective life cycle, that we're actually able to create new cars that produce zero emissions using existing, to a large extent, objects and artefacts that had already been manufactured.
I understand you got some funding for the project from Kirkland Gold, which is a locally based gold company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So how much was that and how important was that?
Well, that funding was very, very important to the project because effectively we needed 3 things to make this project happen. We needed some committed young women And in some ways, that can be really difficult if what you've presented doesn't align with their interests and their values. So, and there was, when I first floated this as a Girls in STEM project, there was a bit of doubt expressed in my community that I'd get the numbers of young women that I needed. Fortunately, turned out not to be the case. The other thing I needed was obviously a car, as well as a technology partner, which we achieved through Jaunt, and we've got other industry partnerships in there, including the Discovery Science and Technology Centre, where we will base the vehicle when it's in rental phase for the community, and they have charging and a Tesla battery, so they've got solar panels and a Tesla battery we can use. And I guess the third thing is we needed a significant level of investment, which was provided by Kirkland Lake Gold through their community partnerships program. And that program was mostly designed to assist businesses in Loddon Campaspe who had a community focus and were impacted in their service delivery by COVID-19. But they also had a proportion of money set aside for Girls in STEM initiatives, because they are particularly keen to get women working in the technology sector, because that suits their long-term goals and visions. And so they granted us $200,000.
Now, they're all girls in this project, so why girls, Graeme?
Oh, look, mate, it's because of the underrepresentation of girls in tertiary STEM courses, and also their underrepresentation in manufacturing and engineering and also in the trades. I think there's a lot of prevailing attitudes that excludes young women or serve to exclude young women from considering these trades as a viable career. Now, in Bendigo, we have the largest contributor to the gross domestic product for the Greater Bendigo region is manufacturing, which is unusual for Australia. It usually tends to be health or education, but here manufacturing is a really significant part of the local economic development of the region. And there's, all of our industry partners and all of the manufacturers that I talk to are crying out for qualified staff that have really good employability skills and not able to secure them. So by tapping into women, we're able to tap into 50%, or not quite 50, but a significant proportion of the working population that currently isn't considering those careers. And I guess the other thing is that in 2019, the region released the Regional Engineering and Advanced Manufacturing Roadmap, of which a couple of the goals were to debunk the myth that trades careers are dirty and underpaid, and also to create a pipeline of jobs. So this project really fits into those aspirations as well. And the other thing is to acknowledge that there is a growing skills gap in Australia that we simply cannot fill with our current enrolments. So if you look at tertiary enrolments, and you exclude allied health, there's less than 10% of those places being taken up by women in Australia. And so those are really the things I wanted to address.
Yeah. Graeme, the way I read it, and I'm not sure, but you don't have girls at your school, so you bring them in from surrounding high schools?
That's right. So quick masterclass on what Bendigo Tech School is and does. So tech schools were set up as an aspirational series of innovation hubs that aim to give young people the skills they need for the jobs of tomorrow. So we cover entrepreneurship, we cover technology, communication, literacy, numeracy in programs that reflect the genuine needs and industry problems of each region where the tech schools are set up. So we're like a high-tech innovation hub. So we don't actually have any students of our own. We work with all of our partner schools within a local government area. So in Bendigo's case, we have 14 different schools that we work with. So what we've done is we've offered those schools the opportunity to be involved, and young women from 4 different schools have put their hands up and said, yes, we'd like to be involved. And so Bendigo South East College very generously gave us their automotive workshop for a whole term where there was a gap in programming so that we could get started. And that's been really good because they also gave us time in the timetable as well, which was fantastic.
Yeah, so those girls are bussed in for weekly programs or weekly?
Yeah, there's a weekly program now because we've got 25, 26 women in the program. What we do is we've divided them into two groups because the space isn't big enough for them all to work on the car at the same time. And most of the students come from Bendigo Southeast College, and then there's about a half dozen that come from other schools, and their schools arrange to get them there, either through parents or school transportation each week that we run the program. And to give you a measure of the success of, so unfortunately we missed today's program because of the lockdown. But we'd run 5 sessions, and the sessions are only 2 hours long. In those not even 10 hours, moving aside, briefing and communication and OH&S staff, we have managed to disassemble the Range Rovers to the point we're about to take it off its chassis. So that's not even 10 hours to get to that point, which is pretty remarkable. They started with a full car. Yeah. They're like a swarm with tools. They're amazing.
So what years are those girls from, Graeme?
They range from year 7 to 10. A lot of those girls are really passionate about the environment and just really want to make a difference for the future, and it's important to them to be involved in that project for that reason. A lot of them are thinking about engineering, and some of them just really like cars, and they're considering, careers in the car industry. And the sort of things that they tell me is that it's a lot easier than they thought it would be, and that working on the car and understanding about how cars are built has just been really useful knowledge and broken down a lot of misconceptions about the automotive trades. But the key thing is they're really enjoying it. Yeah. One of our students, she actually does all of her classroom work at home so that she's allowed to go in and spend extra time on the project during her classes, which is really great. And she comes to every session just voluntarily. Yeah. And, it's just really great to see that.
Do you think the girls have taken ownership of the project?
Oh, look, we're not quite at the point where they have the level of agency that I would like them to have. I guess because it's taken so many years and we're working with a specific type of vehicle and a specific industry partner, we had to make a lot of those decisions early on just to make sure that we could deliver the project. But what I'm really hoping that they're going to do, because the next phase of the project, so we're currently in disassembly, we then have to do restoration, electric conversion and reassembly. What I'm hoping is that when we get to the stage where we actually start creating the community enterprise and the project around that they're going to completely own that and design it and basically take over the project management, But I think the most important thing, and this is using an educational theory known as Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory, is you've got to start off with results that are easy to achieve, very hands-on, very engaging, and then gradually increase the level of difficulty and commitment over time so that it's manageable. And so that's the way we've approached it, just with a very hands-on beginning and then gradually introducing those project management theories for which we have industry support for people in the community who are going to work with the girls to help them design their business plan. And we've even had Blackbird reach out to us and offer to assist as well, which is great.
This will effectively be, well, the way I understand it, a Tesla with a Land Rover body. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, well, it's so I guess it's important to distinguish that there's Range Rovers and there's Land Rovers. This one's a Range Rover Classic, so it was manufactured in 1982. It's a 3-door. The reason we chose that car, there were about 3 different significant reasons. One was, as an engineering proposition, they're quite similar to a Land Rover, and that's the work that Jaunt Motors are doing with their conversion space. So there was enough similarity that to jump across to Range Rovers was easy for them to do. It was actually, so the fellow who donated the car to us, Doug Peters, he's a collector. And he actually persuaded me that the Range Rover was a better project vehicle because it's far more spacious in terms of its interior and the space you can access under the bonnet, but also you can dismantle the entire car into pieces you can carry because everything is bolted together because they were flat packed. The third reason was that you can pretty much buy every part for the car new that you might need because of the cult status attached to into that particular vehicle. And this particular car has become very desired and valuable over the past few years. I've seen unrestored original, versions of these cars selling for up to $175,000. The market for the sort of car we started with is probably at a lower price point. But the point was, if we were going to be making this investment, that we should try to put the money into something that will retain its value.
I've seen pictures of you in overalls, Graeme.
Yes, yes, mate.
Is this just your hands-on sort of person, or?
Well, look, actually, that is a really good point, and the answer is emphatically yes. I have always loved making, tinkering, designing, whether it was putting a cat run together for the cats or building my own furniture. And I started working on cars when I was in high school because I didn't have enough money to pay a mechanic. And I just used to get the Haynes and the Gregory's manuals and reverse engineer everything. And look, there were a couple of disasters, to be fair, but all a learning experience. And for me, my role here at the university and at the tech school is very administrative at times. So having the ability to jump into a hands-on practical project that young people are enjoying so much has really been a fantastic opportunity, and the part of my job that I'm enjoying the most at the moment, because all of those skills that I've accumulated ever since I was a volunteer on a steam preservation railway, right through to studying fine art and design, are able to be deployed in this particular project. And Doug comes up and helps out sometimes, and Rob Forbes, who is the teacher who assists to coordinate over at BSE, is a former panel beater, as well as an artist. So he has that beautiful sensitivity of somebody who has come from both a creative and a practical background. So, and we're able to pass on all of those skills and knowledge collected over several lifetimes to these young women. So I think it's a great legacy in a way to be able to pass on that knowledge.
Graeme, has someone drawn up a plan for the project? Like, do you know what the car's going to look like when it's finished?
Look, we haven't. We've actually got a project plan and timeline. But in terms of what it will look like a standard 1982 Range Rover, except that when you open the bonnet, there'll be a great big battery box sitting on top of a Tesla motor and a re-engineered transfer case that lowers the torque and power to something that the Range Rover axles can handle, and that'll bolt straight onto the prop shaft. So there's a great deal of mechanical simplicity compared to a conventional vehicle, because we've done away with the engine, the transmission, the fuel lines, the fuel tank, and all of the ancillary services that were originally driven by belts, and replace those all with electrical systems. There's a fair to even chance it'll have an air suspension, so electric compressor driving an air suspension, because that makes it safer. As a rental vehicle, we think that's important. When you sit in the car, the major difference that you'll notice from a Range Rover Classic of that era is that there's no transmission controls at all. It'll just be a carpeted transmission hump, and there'll be a little black box that essentially controls all of the systems, several different driving modes, and we'll integrate the original switching into systems where we can, but we will have to, re-engineer things like the gauges, because the fuel has to be converted to show charge. It'll have a Defender pedal, or a recent model Defender throttle pedal, because it needs a digital output, and an analog pedal can't do that. And we have to re-engineer things like the power steering and the braking system, and the HVAC for heating and cooling as well.
So it'll still be a four-wheel drive, though?
It will still operate as a four-wheel drive, absolutely.
So we'll have a Tesla motor front and back, or? One
Tesla motor, but with a re-engineered torque reduction transfer case that connects directly to the front and rear prop shaft.
And what's the finish time for this?
Well, we don't know. There's a lot of variables, and COVID-19, and we're also going to encounter a lot of delays with importing parts from overseas, which is a little bit inevitable because most of the parts that we need are located in the UK. I guess. Optimistically, we're saying we'd love to have it on the road within 2 years of the start date, which was March this year. So if we looked at having it completed for March 2023, I think that's very achievable. We'd actually really like to take it to the energy breakthrough in Maryborough in November of 2022, because that's the right audience to sort of have a bit of a launch event, and it might well happen sooner or that, but as you could appreciate, with both a restoration and a conversion, there's a lot of variables that we have to address. But we do have amazing support from our industry community. When this story went national, we were contacted by a lot of people. One was a local auto elects guy who was just so enthusiastic about what we're doing and wanted to help, have tours of the workshop, talk to the girls about his career, maybe even do some of the work down on site. But he said, I just, really want to be involved. And the more traction we get with our community, the more people who say, look, I just want to help however I can. And that's just really great for those girls to have so much support from our community. Yeah.
The ABC story said there are 25 girls involved. Is that still the case?
Oh, there's more now.
More, is that?
I lost one, but I gained two. And actually, to be honest, every session I've run, there seems to be a new person. I'm wearing a pathway down to the place that sells overalls, trying to keep up with them.
Graeme, I've heard about STEM. That's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But STEAM is sort of a new one on me. So you put arts in there.
Well, we do put arts, but we put arts in the broadest liberal arts sense because, and look, there's all sorts of ways of explaining these sorts of innovation programs. One I like from Templestowe College's STEAM, so that's putting entrepreneurship ahead of the STEAM part. Okay. There's all sorts of other acronyms, but all we're essentially acknowledging is that when you have STEM, you have the conditions of invention. But you don't have innovation until you've scaled up and you've made an impact. And that's where the liberal arts comes in terms of understanding, markets, production systems, project management, aesthetics, all of those things together are what any enterprise needs in order to achieve innovation success. So that's why we throw the A in a very general sense, and also acknowledging that there is, connectivity beyond the core subject areas for young people who might have more of an interest in the creative side of the project than the hands-on or the engineering aspects. We want to be inclusive, but here at La Trobe we do say it's STEAM, not STEM, because we're more than just inventing stuff. We want to talk about the innovation development cycle as well.
You keep mentioning La Trobe, so is Bendigo Tech School a part of La Trobe or something? Yeah,
that's a really great question. So every one of the 10 tech schools in Victoria are hosted by a tertiary partner. So in our case, La Trobe is our host, and what that means is that they're contracted by the Department of Education to deliver the services in the tech school for a 20-year period. And so I'm a La Trobe employee, as are my team. And that's the other really great thing is we have that pathway for those young women to come onto campus and see what happens here, and to make them feel welcome and that the university environment is accessible.
Graeme, you're pretty excited about all this.
Oh, look, I am. And I'm excited because I'm connecting all of these people in my community, industry, young people, education pathways, new technologies, and then looking to the future rather than just working within the fixed term reference of what we have. And, what you've really got to understand is there has been an explosion in global demand for electric vehicles, and there's more interest than ever in this sort of work that we're doing. And it's my great privilege to be the first person that's done a project like this with young women. And it's also my great privilege to work with all of the people in our community who are supporting us.
Are there any others like this in Australia, or is this the only one?
This is the only one I know of in the world.
In the world?
Wow, a Girls in STEM electric car project. There's loads of people who do electric car conversions. There's loads of people, I think there's at least 3 or 4 electric Range Rovers getting around here and there. I know of another 2 in Australia, at least, that are happening at the moment. But this is the only Girls in STEM program that I'm aware of to get young women in the electric conversion space. And it's a pretty important project to me, just because we're creating those opportunities for this group and they are such a funny, good-natured, cooperative. You couldn't ask for a better team, and they're just so motivated. It's a great privilege. Yeah.
What happens, Graeme, if these girls decide that this is really what they want to do when they're at a high school?
Yeah.
Do they change schools or change their subjects, or what happens?
Well, that's a really good question. And in the Bendigo context, we have what's called the Bendigo Education Plan model. So that means that students in high school go to one high school for years 7 to 10, and then they go to Bendigo Senior Secondary College or to one of the independent providers in Bendigo for their year 11 and 12. Now, the advantage is that most of those, senior secondary providers also have VET and VCAL programs. One of those is actually really fantastic. It's called Head Start. That's basically an apprenticeship in schools program where you might work a couple of days a week while you still, you study for the other 3.5 days. So what we'd hope is that some of these young women, when they get to Bendigo Senior in a year or 2, would actually decide to undertake an apprenticeship through the Head Start program, and there would be support from an employer for them to do that as well.
Would any of these girls have a driver's licence, or are they too young?
I don't think a single one of them would. There might be a couple who are old enough to have a learner's. Actually, one of the things I've joked about is that they might be able to use the car to do their driving licence test in as a thank you. So we hope that happens, because that would be a wonderful story, wouldn't it? Actually doing your licence test in the car you built yourself, provided that I don't think it matters. I was just thinking we might exceed the power requirements for P-platers, but I don't think it matters when you're a learner.
That's an interesting point, because I know there's a difference in licences between automatics and manuals, isn't there? So where does an electric car fit in?
Well, you can make them either way. So the cars that Jaunt have built to date, they have been EV on transmission adapter plate, where actually they're either their first or their second Tesla conversion that does away with the transmission altogether, depending on which one goes first. But the other one will be a Land Rover. And so ours will be fully automatic with regenerative braking.
This will ease your climate grief. Have a listen to this 14-year-old student from Bendigo Southeast, Lilly, who is working on the conversion of a Range Rover to an electric car. She's one of more than 20 girls involved with the project. Hello, Lilly.
Oh, hello. Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Lilly. What school do you go to, Lilly, and what year are you in?
I go to Bendigo Southeast and I'm in year 9.
And why did you get involved with this project?
I think this project's incredibly important to a lot of young women around me. Electric cars, I believe, are the way of the future, so we really have to make more in Australia and see more around. I think it's also really important that a lot of young women get involved, and I think we're really fortunate to be able to have this opportunity, so I jumped on board.
So has this project influenced your ideas for a career?
Most definitely. Perhaps not having a career in mechanics or something along those lines, but something along like environmental or electric energy instead of gas. That's definitely something I'd like to look at.
You mentioned before that you feel electric cars are important to the future. So why do you think that?
Well, we've only got one planet, and if we've only got one planet, there's no plan B. I think we really have to start acting upon climate change. We're running out of time. We've already run out of time, I believe. And I think we're already heading to a point that's really, really dangerous for everyone involved. Electric cars are a way we can reduce carbon emissions and a way we can try and keep this planet cleaner. If we look at European countries, they're already making such leaps and bounds. And I think Australia is a first world country, so we need to start acting that way, and we need to get some electric cars here.
I was going to ask you why the climate crisis is important to you, Lilly, but I think you've answered all that. So, will you see this project through to its conclusion, Lilly?
Definitely. I think that's the plan. With COVID and lockdown, we've had to postpone it a couple of weeks, so it will run longer than expected. But at the end, I'm really excited to have a finished car.
Have you found the work on the car difficult or hard or just confusing, or how's it been?
Oh, well, look, there are definitely some moments where you got to stop, think, and okay, what am I actually trying to do here? You know, some bolts that are too tight and a lot of parts are rusty and look a bit different to what they might look today. But I definitely think the work's been manageable. And I think we've had such great guidance from the tech school and from Bendigo Southeast that we're able to do it well.
Is this project what you expected it would be?
I think it is to a degree. I guess I expected some, less sort of help, but I think we've achieved a nice amount of help from industry. And I also did not expect to have so many days where we'd go out and actually have a look at people doing jobs like mechanics and things like that, and like real world experience. I didn't expect that, but I'm so grateful for it.
So are the boys around you a bit envious of what you're doing?
Oh, most definitely. They're all so jealous. I've heard them all complaining, oh, how come the girls all get to do this? But that's the thing. I think if we didn't have this program specifically for girls, you would see two in it perhaps. And I think this is an industry that can be have both genders or all genders, so we don't need to divide it like that. But I think having a program just for girls, perhaps there can be one just for boys in the future.
So what happens for you personally once this project is over, Lilly?
The Bendigo Tech School and Bendigo Southeast always make sure there's lots of opportunities for you. So I'm really looking forward to the future once this car is completed to see it being a social enterprise. And then I'm looking forward to whatever other programs the Bendigo Tech School come up with.
So you wouldn't have your licence, I imagine?
Oh, not yet. Only 14. Got a couple more years to wait.
There's some suggestion you might be able to use this car to get your licence.
Oh, yes. Well, they're looking at lots of different ways we can make this car into something for the community. So I'm really excited to see where that goes.
So what will your involvement with that be?
Well, obviously I'll be helping all the other girls with making the car into, looking nice as well. But we're hoping that it can also be brought into the community as either something to help young drivers or to be able to go around like a tourist sort of attraction.
Have you been in an electric car, Lilly?
I have, and I've seen a couple, obviously not driving, but as a passenger I have.
Would you like to say something about the project?
I'd just love to say how awesome and lucky we are to have this project, but I'm also really excited for your podcast, and I really love how people are talking about climate change because it's such a real issue. We've got one planet and we really need to address it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lilly.
Just one more thing to add. I'd really like to say thank you to Graeme Wiggins from the tech school. He's sort of one of the men that have pulled it all together. So he's definitely one to thank, and everyone around us that have helped us so much.
Yeah, he's a wonderful enthusiast, isn't he?
Oh, he's incredible, and he's really looking at technology for the future. It's incredible. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Lilly. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, lovely meeting you. Have a good day.
You too. Nice to meet you. Climate Conversations is produced with the support of the Melbourne-based Climactic Collective and is one of more than 20 podcasts that make up that collective. More about the collective and the associated podcasts can be found at climactic.com.au. Responsibility for Climate Conversations rests with me, but you could help with the questions. And if something is not being asked of whom it should be asked, then please make a suggestion and contact me on r.mclean7@icloud.com. To access earlier episodes of Climate Conversations, go to the Climactic Collective website. Click on the Climate Conversations artwork, and that will allow you to look at all the past episodes. In all the chaos and rhetoric surrounding the climate conversation, I urge you to put your faith in genuine climate science. And remember that action is the best antidote to despair, and that, I must note, is one of the drivers of this podcast. Of course, we should also remember that we always need to be kind, for whoever we meet is fighting a great battle. That wraps up this episode of Climate Conversations, and so until we talk again, please take care.